Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Law Splaining the Interwebs. I am your host, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. Hey, guys, what's up? Dude, I'm really excited because the YouTube link was now created by Rumble Studio ahead of time. I didn't even notice. And now it's there. Just getting my chat windows pulled up here so that I can see you guys. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Saturday. I know I am. Getting this set up. Almost there. Sorry. I was taken by surprise. Normally when that happens, it's not good. It's not a good thing. Okay. So anyway, hey guys, what's up? We're just doing a little Saturday live stream here. Thanks, C Goody, for the links in the description. It's Saturday, man. It's a good day. It's beautiful here in Minnesota. It's fucking hot. Hence my face being red like the men whose land we stole or something. No, I was outside a lot earlier today. Had some little visitors, and let me just announce up front, I have a hard out at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock, I got to go because, again, got some small friends coming over to the house to hang out. So I'm very excited for that. But I figured in the meanwhile here, we would do a little show. Joe Biden has dropped an op-ed on his plans to reform the Supreme Court, which obviously is going to be great. Obviously, that's going to be a good idea. Nothing could go wrong with that at all. And then the other thing I've got queued up, I've got a couple other stories, but the other thing I've got queued up is Minnesota had a recent ruling from their Supreme Court, our Supreme Court, whatever, on a duty to retreat. In people are kind of confused because they believe that the duty to retreat is a new thing in Minnesota, but it's not. It's not. Remember that if there's something, I guess, anti-freedom and stupid, Minnesota was ahead of the game. We're the most, I almost said we're the most communist state, and I forgot California existed. But sometimes it's hard to chicken and egg who did it first, California or Minnesota. Minnesota is the only state, of course, that voted against Ronald Reagan because of Walter Mondale or whatever. But yeah, full on commie status. That being said, a lot of people are saying a lot of funny things about me, which is fine. Like I said, they get to do that. But it's interesting watching the lack of like reading comprehension. And it's interesting seeing people make leaps in logic about things and just simply draw conclusions that are completely fictitious. But it's all the same for me. It doesn't matter until things happen and happen publicly. I just have to kind of watch and go, that's interesting. Kind of sucks that people think that, but that's interesting. But anyway, at least I'm not Mr. Beast, I guess. But yeah, we're going to read through that op-ed. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about the Supreme Court and kind of the philosophy of the Supreme Court. I differ in how I think the court should be structured versus how it is structured. But I don't know that we can get to this other thing because we've done the way we do it now for a long time. But I've talked about that before, but we'll probably review that a little bit as we talk about Biden's changes, his proposed changes in the op-ed. Someone just asked if what I think about Kyle Rittenhouse's struggles. I mean, I think it's amazing. This is what election years do to people, right? If you have an opinion, sorry, let me rephrase this. I'll phrase it differently. If you're a public person, you are shackled to the opinion of the viewer, period. No matter who you are, no matter what the viewer is. And the question is, which chains pull hardest? You're no longer, I'm saying this tongue in cheek, but you're no longer allowed to have your own opinion. I mean, obviously you have your own opinion, but the amount of grace that's given for a differing opinion disappears immediately in an election year. But that being said, Kyle Rittenhouse is going through that a little bit. And I only wish Kyle the best. I think people forget how young he is. I think people forget how how your opinions manifest when you're what, 22, 23 years old. I think he's 22. How your opinions manifest, how they come out, how quickly they can change. The factors that go into those opinions are very different from someone who's going to be 35 or 40 years old. And so you see these boomers online like me or whatever, and people are going after Kyle Rittenhouse for not like wholeheartedly supporting Trump because he doesn't feel or didn't feel at the time that Trump had, the right stance on the Second Amendment. And that's kind of Kyle's brand now, along with the brand that saved his life. So you could understand maybe why he would have that opinion. And maybe he's wrong. Like maybe he was wrong about Donald Trump and his position. I don't even know the specifics of it. They don't really matter to me. Now it sounds like old Kyle got a phone call or two and people are like, hey, you're wrong about Trump or whatever. And now he says that Trump's got his full support. So who knows? But man, that kid, a young man, I should say, he's not really a kid anymore. That young man has his life is determined by other people. And I don't mean like bad advisors. That was for a while, but now his life is determined by the public. He has to do something the way that he is demanded to do it, or else what else does he do? I mean, he's infamous. Infamy is a scary thing that way because it may force you to the hell is this? I don't care about this shit. Infamy kind of pigeonholes you into a spot, a temporal locus, sometimes a physical location as well. And you are there for people forever. Kyle Rittenhouse will always be the Kenosha kid. Unless something really drastic happens that overshadows it, which is unlikely. And you fucking hope so. Hope that it doesn't. Because what would have to happen to overshadow that moment in his life would be exceedingly traumatic. But because of that, because he's always the Kenosha kid, I mean, his brand is basically going to be, and he has to kind of have a brand because his personal name carries so much baggage with it. If he shows up to work a regular job, the employers are going to have to make a decision as to whether or not that'll be a problem for them. Not even a bad problem. Sometimes it's a good problem, but they say in marketing, any attention is good attention, but that's not entirely true. Trust me, it's not entirely true. And so brands will have to deal with brands who might hire him either as an outspoken spokesman, like the current brands he's working with, or merely as just a person trying to work a job. When people find out, there will be backlash. And so they have to figure out what that means. And a lot of them just don't want to. It's not that they don't like him or even disagree, but it's like, do we want to deal with it? But hey, that's the way it goes. He's a public person now and he belongs to the public. And the public, believe me, when they believe they own you, they believe they own you. And you can try and buck that idea, but you won't ever remove it from the heads of the owners. They'll always have that belief. Whether you accept it or not is irrelevant to them. So anyway, we're not going to talk too much about that. Logan Orr says, when holding the cuck cam, what's your favorite chair? Who sits in a chair when holding the cuck cam? I mean, seriously. What's up, Wartooth88? Thanks, brother. Good to see you too. Anyway, let's just jump into this Biden. Biden thing here. Where is that? Da, 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 da. Okay, so I have Bill Barr's commentary of it, which I don't give a shit about that. Much more interested in Biden's reform op-ed, which we'll pull up here. Oh my gosh. Allow ads on Fox News. Fine, I don't fucking care. Just refresh. I did refresh the page, bitch. Oh, you stupid whore. No, turn off. Refresh. My ad blocker won't turn off. Go away. Can I just fucking hell? You know what? We'll do it this way. Is that 0% chance of passing? Why is brapping Biden even trying? No idea. But let's see what he's got. Just because it doesn't have a chance of passing, maybe the ideas are good, right? Like maybe they're great. I don't know. Let's take a peek at them. Wait, this isn't the one I even want. Hold on. I grabbed the wrong page. Just a second. Holy shit. This is way easier than I'm making it out to be. It's like I don't know how to do this. Find op-ed SCOTUS. It's from Guapo. El Guapo. Share this tab. Okay, here we go. Fuck off. All right. So this is from the Washington Post. Let's take a peek at this. Opinion Joe Biden. It's his opinion. This is definitely 100% Joe Biden's opinion. No one else wrote this for him. This was all on his own. That's why he wrote it in ice cream and little girl's skin. My plan to reform the Supreme Court and ensure no president is above the law. This is a terrible plan for any president to do, by the way. We can and must prevent the abuse of presidential power and restore the public's faith in our judicial system. Great. Let's see how. The writer is President of the United States. Well, thank you, Washington Post. Thank you. This nation was founded on a simple yet profound principle. No one is above the law, not the President of the United States, not a justice on the Supreme Court of the United States. No one. And this is, of course, interesting. Wait, oh shit. This is the... Yeah. Here's the first thing to understand. By their definition of above the law, a huge percentage of Americans are above the law by their standard because qualified immunity exists. And qualified immunity is a concept that puts government actors above the law when they are making discretionary choices within the confines of their job's reasonable expectations. So if they're within their course of conduct, their regular course of conduct for their employment by the government, and they have a discretionary decision to make, and they make that decision, they can't be punished for the consequences of that decision. Qualified, that's a summary of it, but that's roughly applicable. That applies to any government employee, which means anybody who works at the state and federal government has an opportunity to be above the law. So by saying that the president having immunity for stuff he does as president is him being above the law is frankly to just put the president in line with other government employees. And that's fucking amazing. Drop Barracuda says, we'll do it live. Exactly. But no one is saying anyone should be above the law. It's more a recognition of the law applies differently to different levels of people for different reasons. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of qualified immunity. A lot of people are not the biggest fan of qualified immunity. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't have a place in government. I mean, I'm not sure it does, but I haven't fully fleshed out the issue to say, oh, it never does or it always does or whatever. I think it's too broad at worst. At worst, it's too broad, or at best, it's too broad. Um, it probably needs to go. But again, it does exist. So to say that the president shouldn't enjoy that level of protection while every other government worker does is kind of ridiculous. But let's not stop there. Let's not forget that Congress carves out special rules for themselves all the time. It doesn't put them above the law, it puts them directly within the law, but they've just sculpted the law to suit their needs. Now, the check against this in the Constitution was simple. The president doesn't write the laws, Congress does. So Congress creating law gets to, they don't get to, they could, I guess, in theory, grant the president special protections. Now, there is a little step here where the judiciary came in and said, well, aside from all that, though, there is this thing called the separation of powers. And if we let Congress or the judiciary determine that the president's actions as president are illegal, then they can effectively control the presidency through intimidation and fear. The president would be concerned at a time when he may need decisive action that his decisive action might be criminal, even though he needs to do it for his job. And that's what we don't want. Right? We don't want the president questioning at the time he presses the nuke button if he's going to get prosecuted for it, if he needs to, intervene in a global conflict or something like that. If the president is making a decision critical to national security that needs to be made now, we don't want him to have to consult with 10,000 lawyers to see if he's going to get prosecuted and spend the rest of his life in prison. So, initially, right out the gate, we're off with this stupid premise. No one is above the law. Well, no one says anyone's above the law. And this goes all the way back to the Federalist Papers. There are special protections for Congress and the president. I mean, hell, a congressman can't be arrested during session if they're on their way to the Capitol. Obvious reason for this is if you could just arrest every no vote, you could pass anything you wanted. They didn't want that to happen. So they create this special provision that allows congressmen to murder someone and then be on the way to session for a vote and say, hey, you can't arrest me right now. You have to let me go. They can arrest them later. They can indict them. They can do all that stuff. They're not immune from prosecution entirely, but they do have a special carve out that's not available to anybody else. Nobody else is on the way to their job. They're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I know you're saying I murdered some guy, but I really got to get to the Costco to, greet people or whatever. That's not happening. But we just collectively forget, because it's the president, that all sorts of these carve outs exist for all sorts of people at much lower rankings than the president. But the Supreme Court's 6-3 decision on July 1 to grant presidents broad immunity from prosecution for crimes they commit in office means there are virtually no limits on what a president can do. This is flat out fucking false. This is, first of all, a misrepresentation of what the immunity grants. And second of all, there are plenty of limits on what a president can do. Actually, there's an ultimate limit on what a president can do, and that's whatever Congress doesn't want him to do. Because Congress holds the power of impeachment, and it's a plenary authority of the House to bring articles and of the Senate to try the impeachment. There is no challenge to it. There is no Supreme Court intervention to say, whoa, 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 you can't impeach the president here. The House solely gets to determine who gets impeached, and the Senate solely gets to try the impeachment, limited to the confines of the few requirements put on trials of presidents specifically. The Supreme Court is on record over and over saying they don't get to intervene in impeachments. They don't get to determine the validity of them. Congress does that. It's a power granted directly by the Constitution. And let's be clear, powers to Congress are granted by the Constitution. They're not like rights. Rights are recognized by the Constitution. Powers to government are granted because they took them from us and gave them to them. That's a grant of power, not a recognition of a right. Subtle distinction. But here we go. The only limits will be those that are self-imposed by the person occupying the Oval Office. This is untrue, but to the extent you could sensationalize it to make it true, it's the same as it was before. Presidents already enjoyed broad freedom from prosecution. The fact that no president has been federally indicted prior to Donald Trump is testament to uh, how much leeway they got. Just think of every time there's an actual party power shift, the the back and forth between candidates and the vitriol and the level of um, animus that this country can have for the other political part of the spectrum, that hasn't actually changed as much as people make it out to. There's maybe a little bit of more decorum throughout the 70s and 80s, maybe. But if you go back throughout this history, you're going to find vicious presidential fights either way. And certainly allegations of criminal activity have arisen and could have been credibly charged to any number of presidents, but they weren't. They weren't. If a future president incites a violent mob to storm the Capitol and stop the peaceful transfer of power, like we saw on January 6th, there may be no legal consequences. Well, the amazing thing is there weren't legal consequences for the president because no one could show incitement, even at the low bar of impeachment. They couldn't impeach President Trump for incitement. They wouldn't ever be able to raise that to the criminal level for incitement. But here's the thing: stop the peaceful transfer of power, like we saw on January 6th. The peaceful transfer of power wouldn't happen on January 6th under any circumstances outside of something really extraordinary, like an assassination or an incapacitation of a sitting president or a 25th Amendment removal. The transfer of power would happen at inauguration weeks later. So we didn't have this actually happen on January 6th. And there was almost no even theoretical way that the transfer of power could be stopped by the actions of the January 6th protesters. But hey, I wonder if there's anybody who would disagree with the fact of there being no legal consequences for what happened on January 6th. Amazing. And that's only the beginning. I think Trump should have pardoned all those guys before he left office. I think a lot of people expected that. He really should have. He should have pardoned anybody participating in the January 6th protests. In hindsight, he really should have just done that. He should have said, we recognize that this is an act of free speech. We recognize that there may have been acts committed in conjunction with this, but those acts were precipitated and perpetrated by a Congress who doesn't care and an opposing political party who want Americans to suffer. And we're not going to allow them to do a multi-year witch hunt for people for walking across an imaginary line or being led into a building. He should have done that. I mean, it would have been wildly unpopular. It would have potentially taken him out of this race in the election, but I think it would have left a legacy of recognition of Americans' anger over what they perceived as a stolen or rigged election. And the fact that that anger is valid, even if the election wasn't stolen, the very thought and perception that America's election system is so fucking porous. It is so porous that the American people have no faith in its validity following 2020. That recognition should have occurred at an official level, and it could have come from Trump. Could have come from Biden too, but he's an idiot. On top of dangerous and extreme decisions that overturned settled legal precedents, including Roe versus Wade. Sure, like, overturning settled legal precedents is bad. Like when we overturned Korematsu, because fuck the Japanese, put them all in camps, right? Right, Joe? Or when we overturned Brown versus Board, because fuck the blacks, put them in shittier schools, right, Joe? Just do that. That's fine. Nobody settled legal principles. Dred Scott. Yeah, stay slaves. Just go ahead and stay a slave. We don't want to. We would never want to overturn settled law. That would be crazy. But of course, they want Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade. Let's be real about this. Let's take a moment. Roe versus Wade was about the least settled law of any Supreme Court decision ever. From the moment Roe versus Wade dropped, it was challenged over and over and over and over again. It was chipped at by every single state legislature trying to define the bounds of Roe versus Wade. It was addressed in Supreme Court decisions for the past 60 years, either further protecting it or reinforcing it or clarifying and cleaning up the legal mess that was left by the 9 justices who decided it. They had to determine what was effectively too much of an intrusion on what became recognized as an integral human right. Not anymore. Get wrecked. Get wrecked, haunted house bitches. They had to clarify what was too much of an imposition on this right that no one wrote down, this right that did not exist at the time of the founding, this right that had no basis in the history or tradition of the United States. Almost no literature exists about it. And yet they act as if it was this sacrosanct thing that all Americans desperately needed and wanted, and all women would die without it. But they spent the next 6 decades trying to figure out just what the hell these guys meant when they made up the law. And they made it up. Make no mistake. Roe versus Wade was a whole cloth creation of 9 old white men. It just was. Trying to get some ass with no consequences, I guess. But they created it. And that's why it was so contested for so long. And that's why even justices like Ruth Bader Ginsburg said it was bad law. This is a bad law. She agrees with the premise, but she says it's bad law. And that's because it always was. And Congress had the opportunity, by the way. They regulate commerce, and baby killing is an industry. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Planned Parenthood, it makes some money. It makes money. So this idea, though, that Congress has no power to regulate abortion is silly. They've always had power to regulate abortion. The states having power to regulate abortion was preferable. I think taking it away from the federal Congress is right, but they always had power to do it. They really didn't. Then Texas comes along, it's like, well, nope, you're going to spit them out. No coat hangers for you, Missy. And people lost their damn minds, of course. Actually, they didn't. They didn't lose their minds. That was a sensationalized fiction, as things often are. It's the best propaganda wins the populace, and the media had a huge hand in the propaganda of Roe versus Wade, of course. But this idea that Roe versus Wade was settled law, just look at every single year there's a lawsuit, and many of them taken up by the Supreme Court, somehow refining or defining some aspect of it. And you can go to the big ones like Planned Parenthood versus Casey, which in 1992, they said, yeah, that second trimester thing is too far. We should just go to fetal viability, because like a second trimester, now that we know more about science, we realize that that baby became like more of a person than we thought earlier, because now we have ultrasounds or whatever. Simple. Or you get to the things that I'm talking about, where things like requiring a transvaginal ultrasound prior to performing a D&E abortion was maybe, according to the Supreme Court, I believe, a bridge too far for states to impose that requirements on women. Saying, no, this is a fundamental right. She shouldn't have to have an invasive procedure like a transvaginal ultrasound to go ahead and perform an abortion. If she's going to have access to the right and we put this requirement on her, then that's too much. Some of the requirements were not too much. Putting their names on a list was too much, apparently. Not for gun ownership, though. That's fine. But for baby eating or destroying or whatever, like that, you can't put them on a list. But every fucking other fundamental right that exists, you can go on a government list, you little bootlicking bastard. But Roe versus Wade is a rallying cry for the politically uninformed. Here we go. We got a couple chats here. Drop Barracuda says, real question. Why does anyone care about impeachment? Only 3 presidents have been impeached: Andrew Johnson, Clinton, and Trump, and none left office. Nixon wasn't impeached. He just left during the process. Well, presidents should have been impeached at a higher rate, we would think. But the thing is, the politicians don't want to expend the capital of going against the most popular man in the country. Theoretically, when a president's popularity is half of everybody or more, like that looks really popular. Now, of course, there are times where that popularity will drop down, and that might be when impeachment matters. Impeachment was supposed to be hard enough to not just be a political baton, but it was supposed to be a legitimate enforcement tool. And it's never happened or effectively happened against a president, because it's the president. We defer a lot to the decisions that they make. But yeah, Angel Australia gifted 10 memberships. Thank you, Angel. Really appreciate that. John Ruck, Saturday and Sunday daytime positive Trump and lies FJB and cackling Kamala are the best streams. You may not like it. You do get all of Timcast views weekends. Oh, thanks. I had no idea. Young gay progressive liberal says, here's some crack change for you in April. Well, thank you very much. That's nice. John Ruck says, calling out the live streams. Thanks. A lot needed. And C Goody says, mod Kimmy Joe. They'll do stuff unlike me. Do what? What's she gonna do? Here, Kimmy Joe, you got your moderator now. Congrats, you're gay. Sorry. Oh. Dadman says Nixon was impeached. He retired before trial. I thought he retired before the impeachment, but before the trial would make sense. The interesting thing is, theoretically, the Senate could have still conducted the trial of the impeached President Nixon, except no one actually knows. And I think this is a big thing for Trump's impeachment is, was he impeached a second time, or was he tried for impeachment a second time? No one really knows. He was tried after he left office. He wasn't tried as a president because he had left office, apparently, but he was tried without the Supreme Court Chief Justice sitting, over the proceedings. We've got William Jefferson Clinton saying, was impeached, not convicted, and bring on the titties and beer. WJC or BJC, BJ Central. That's William Jefferson Clinton. Hey guys, I'm just here to party and walk women home right to my house. Elizabeth Capone Cook, thank you for the sticker. And Drop Barracuda says, do stuff like butt stuff, only if we were with Bill, buddy. All right, here we go. Back to this fucking thing. Roe versus Wade, again, it's just the rallying cry of people who have no idea about what precedent means, about what settled law is, about the complexities of trying to regulate something like abortion. A big problem on a personal level that I have with abortion is really the involvement of other people, because I'm not so sure that the U.S. government would have a right to should have a right to regulate abortifacient usage, right? Like and they've run into problems with that, like the RU 486, which sounds like a processor, but the morning after pill and stuff like that. They've had problems saying that the government can regulate that or make it unavailable. Mifepristone or whatever. They just said, yeah, the FDA gets leeway on classifying that, so you can't just take it away. Abortificants are different than abortions. Abortificants have been around for a really long time. I mean, old women used to go to older women to get special teas brewed that would cause their uterine muscles to cramp up and basically squeeze out a pending pregnancy. And there's not much you can do to stop that shit, right? Like it's like a woman slamming her stomach into a sledgehammer. Can you, we don't want her to, but can you stop her from doing that? At what point does that become a place that the government can step in? Is a way different question than when can you have a doctor shove a vacuum cleaner up and hoover out a baby? Way different questions with different answers. But people like to liken this all to the same thing, but it's not so simple. Okay, so here we go. Back to here. Joe goes, the court is mired in a crisis of ethics. No, they're really not. They're not in any way mired in a crisis of ethics. If anyone thinks Harlan Crow's gifts to Justice Clarence Thomas have impacted Clarence Thomas's rulings in the Supreme Court, you're a fucking idiot. Like, Clarence Thomas is acting as Clarence Thomas. It's not like he's acting out of character as response to some personal gifts that he got from a billionaire. It's not as if the guy's like, here's $1 billion to rule in my cases. He's like, hey, come with me on a trip or whatever. And Clarence is like, okay, Harlan, we'll go as long as I can bring a Pepsi. And like they go and do a thing or whatever. And Ginny's left behind with January 6th flags and she's all cool. But it's not like he's actually doing a quid pro quo. It's an implied quid pro quo or an inferred one for some people where they go, well, if I received a brand new RV from a billionaire, I would have to rule on their cases. But that's a projection. And again, Clarence Thomas isn't ruling in the way that Harlan Crow wants for the, like, because it's out of character for Thomas's judicial perspective. It's right in line, baby. All right, here we go. Sorry, back to this. Scandals involving several justices, I think including Kagan, have caused the public to question the court's fairness and independence. No, this is not what has caused anything of the sort. The media has been trying to get the public to believe that the court is unfair and dependent politically forever, ever since the court was dominated by conservatives, especially once there was a 6-3 majority. That's when the court went full spectrum because their autism in chief, John Roberts, couldn't just flip the script and go, hey guys, we'll make it 5-4 for the libs for a change. He now has to convert another conservative justice with him to get a 5-4 liberal decision. It's not as easy as it used to be. And that's when the media really started going hard on the Supreme Court and saying they were highly politicized. But the court's always been political. It's their fucking job to be political. Again, let me just reiterate that the reason that the justices have lifetime appointments is to fix a 1 of 9 political opinion permanently until they die, with the expectation that it will last multiple decades. And I know that's uncomfortable for people, but it's a political process of appointment and approval. And that political process lends to either a preference by a party. A Republican president and a Republican Senate can put a Republican-ass judge on the Supreme Court, and it's hard to get rid of them. Same with the Democrats. Now, a Republican president and a Democrat Senate, or a Democrat president and a Republican Senate, may not even be able to appoint anyone, but if they do, they're going to be a tempered, more moderate position. So again, the appointment of a judge is a 1 in 9 reflection, a milestone, a flag in the fucking rock of where America's dominant political position is at the time. I mean, it's not perfect, but that's the idea. And that's supposed to be there as an anchor for decades and decades and decades against all of the other branches having the potential to change much quicker. I describe it as a ballast, but that's the point. That's what actually creates the independence of the court. So you got this stodgy old asshole who's stuck 30 years in the past. Good. Maybe we need some values from 30 years in the past, or a political opinion from 30 years in the past. Maybe some guy goes, I don't want an electric vehicle. It's garbage. Yeah, great. Maybe some guy's like, the ponds were way worse when I was a kid. We don't need this EPA shit. Good. Yeah, maybe that's right. That's the whole purpose of them. Every other branch of government is engineered to change along with changing American values and politics much quicker than the Supreme Court. And we want it that way. Anyway, the court's fairness and independence, which are essential to faithfully carrying out its mission of equal justice under the law. Actually, fairness in the way that they mean it is in no way essential to carrying out a mission of equal justice. Equal justice is blind to the politics. Fairness is an equality of attention to the politics. Fairness specifically considers politics and suggests that each side get treated in some sort of affirmative, fair way. Whereas equal justice merely means we don't care what your politics are. Everyone is treated the same. Those are two different things. Fairness would create a better outcome for the losing side to make it even, or to hold back the winning side to make it even. Equal justice doesn't give a shit about the sides. For example, undisclosed gift to justices from individuals with interests in cases before the court. This is so weaselly worded. Individuals with interests in cases before the court. Lots of us have, actually just about everybody here has interests before in cases before the court. Are they before the court? Do they have a specific connection to a case? Is there a nexus to it? Some people would say yes, and you always have to ask, well, where does that attach? How far away are they before you can make that determination? As well as conflicts of interest connected with January 6th insurrectionists. Yeah, this is again about Alito, which is insane because, first of all, what judgment does Alito's wife hanging a flag in like an America in crisis flag upside down on January 6th? How does that impact Judge Alito's ability to do anything? Someone tell me what actually that flag means. Or what Ginny Thomas saying, don't allow President Biden to be elected because she believed there was fraud or whatever. What does that have to do with Clarence Thomas's decisions anywhere? He didn't rule her away on election fraud. So what's the hang up? Jun Wong says, God damn it. If everything is not that simple, if nothing is not complicated, isn't the code of laws a flawed, oversimplified concept to begin with? No, that's actually the code of laws, the federal U.S. code, your state codes, the federal register. These are supposed to be intelligible. They're supposed to be understandable and predictable. That's what they're supposed to do. They don't. They're complicated and ugly. It makes lawyers exist. Drop Barracuda says, imagine Trump gets elected and makes it 7-2. Oh, God, that'd be funny. It raises legitimate questions about the court's impartiality. People saying legitimate doesn't make a question legitimate. And that's probably an informal fallacy. The fallacy of legitimate legitimacy. I served as a U.S. Senator for 36 years. Oh, thanks for reminding us. Including as chairman and ranking member of the Judiciary Committee. Yeah, it's great. I have overseen more Supreme Court nominations as senator, vice president, and president than anyone living today. Again, guys, he's complaining about the result of his work. Like, this is garbage. These people are bad. I oversaw more than anybody else, and this sucks. Like, yeah, you brought us here, buddy. It's you. It's all Joe's fault. I have great respect for our institutions and the separation of powers. Second part's clearly a lie. First part, why would anyone have respect for institutions? Institutions don't demand respect. What is happening now is not normal, and it undermines the public's confidence in the court's decisions, including those impacting personal freedoms. We now stand in a breach. Oh, okay. What's happening now is not normal. Actually, the gifts and everything were all normal. All of that was normal, which is why it came as such a shock to Americans when it was reported, and why it came as a shock to the justices when it was reported negatively, because Clarence Thomas received advice on the reporting requirements, and he reported according to the requirements and the advice, just like every other justice. And it's why all of the justices have been like, yeah, who cares? We all do this. They all do. By the way, senators and House members get the same treatment, except it's way fucking worse. But that didn't undermine the public's confidence in the court decisions. The media did. Misrepresentations from politicians and the media about what those gifts meant or who they came from or what impact they had on decision making. That's what undermined the public's confidence. And it's been an ongoing smear campaign since it became 6-3. Longer technically, but definitely the 6-3. That's why, in the face of increasing threats to America's democratic institutions, notice this is funny because the Supreme Court is not a democratic institution in any way. In any way. I am calling for 3 bold reforms to restore trust and accountability to the court in our democracy. We don't have a democracy. We don't want a democracy. First, I'm calling for a constitutional amendment called the No One is Above the Law Amendment. Oh, good. I think Chuck Schumer's out there like, we're doing the No Kings Amendment. The No Kings. He goes, it would make clear that there is no immunity for crimes a former president committed while in office. Joe, do you really want that? I share found, well, Joe didn't really do anything. His puppet masters did. I share our founders' belief that the president's power is limited, not absolute. Yeah, everybody shares that. We're a nation of laws, not of kings or dictators. Everybody agrees with that, Joe, but your version of limited power of a president is way different. Way, way different than the founders. Actually, the founders are much broader in the power of the president than any of us imagine. It's actually crazy to think, like, always put this in perspective when they're talking about, our founders, how they thought of a president. And think of the president that they picked. It was George Washington, the man who could do nothing wrong in the eyes of society, the man who did plenty of things that were anti-freedom. George Washington is the guy they're like, yeah, this guy, he's the one who says the presidents don't have power. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, what? Because he chose to only have two terms? Is that why you think that he said it's limited power? I mean, it is a limited power, but the founders basically hand selected the president as the guy who America would be ruled until his death. The president was a lifetime appointment with a check every 4 years when they thought of George Washington as the guy to run the country. He didn't have this 2-term bullshit. That wouldn't come until like 1940. But we think of it now. We're like, oh, the founders never wanted this. Oh my God. No, the founders had much more powerful presidents than we did. In one way. But in another way, he's kind of right. Because the founders gave a bunch of power to Congress, and Congress has delegated so much of that power to the executive. But now they're pissed off that the executive actually wields that power. They're very schizophrenic and bipolar on this issue. They want the presidents to have massive authority because they keep writing laws that give them massive authority. But then when it's a president they don't like, they're like, oh my God, you shouldn't have this much power. Oh. Okay. It all depends on the letter behind their name more than their actions. Second, we have had term limits for presidents for nearly 75 years. Yeah. So we should have the same for Supreme Court justices. There is. I don't know if anybody knows this. There is. Really simple. You get 1 term as a Supreme Court justice, and then you die. So there's a term limit. It's 1. It's actually more strict than the presidency. This is amazing because this is actually the argument for people like Joe to not be senators for 36 fucking years. It's the argument for the House to maybe have 3 terms, a 6-year total span in the House, recognizing the shifting political interest of the populace, not being beholden to someone with the biggest war chest on the planet. But Supreme Court justices have 1 term. There is no election. There is no re-election. They're of a different category. The United States is the only major constitutional democracy that gives lifetime seats to its high court. Yet we're also the longest running constitutional democracy and the one that has had the least turmoil in its existence. It's amazing. Term limits would help ensure that the court's membership changes with some regularity. Why? Why do we want that? Again, you always have to ask, when a politician is speaking about a change, who does it benefit? Does it benefit you? No. No. Having a shifting Supreme Court. Imagine. Imagine if these assholes were appointing new justices all the time. All the time. Not just when one cacks off, but all the fucking time. Because there's a term limit. So you got to recycle through this. So we got to have nomination. This is all ad campaigns for politicians to grandstand their way through every nomination and an appointment process that exists. And it's all free. It's free campaigning for them. They don't have to spend their war chest because C-SPAN will be there. Chuck Schumer talking about, or Dick Durbin talking about the president, the new Supreme Court justice and their bad decisions and blah, 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 blah. Can you imagine them doing this all the time? It's insufferable every time. Every time. But all the time, they'd have to be reappointing, renominating, and reappointing. The United States is the only. Oh, wait, here we go. That would make timing for court nominations more predictable and less arbitrary. No, it would make them specifically arbitrary because you'd pick a time arbitrarily that would be, he's 18 years. Here, we'll see what this is an arbitrary decision coming up. It would reduce the chance that any single presidency radically alters the makeup of the court for generations to come. Why do we want this to not happen? Always ask why. Well, we don't want one presidency to radically shift the makeup of the court. All right. You tell me that you don't want to redo the Supreme Court leading up to Reconstruction. Like the Supreme Court that upheld slavery, we don't want a president to come in and radically shift those guys out and put in new people who like defend the premise of non-slavery. Of course you want new people to do that. Of course you want a president at the right time to be able to make a sweeping change to the American judiciary system because maybe it's time to do that. I support a system in which the president would appoint a justice every 2 years to spend 18 years in active service on the Supreme Court. That's literally arbitrary. Every 2 years, and they'll spend 18 years in active service on the Supreme Court. Great. Cool. So each term a president gets 2. And 2 people got to go. Fantastic. Somebody tell me, what's that going to change? What about the composition of the court does this change? Like you would have to rely on the timing, but let's give it a little bit. It's going to end up cyclically keeping a balanced court or whatever. Actually, it could cyclically keep an unbalanced court in the same way. This doesn't solve the problem they want it to solve. There's no way to actually do what they want to happen. It's just a way for them to peacock in front of all of us for free for elections. Let's see. Crackada Law 2 says, I gave my daughter crack. C4CK. I think you mean crack. Like, I don't know why you would do that. That's insane, but good on you, brother, I guess. Third, I'm calling for a binding code of conduct for the Supreme Court. This is common sense. You're going to need a constitutional amendment for this, you dummy. The court's current voluntary ethics code is weak and self-enforced. Yes, except it's not, because you can impeach them. Just impeach them. Justices should be required to disclose gifts. They are. Refrain from public political activity and recuse themselves from cases in which they or their spouses have financial or other conflicts of interest. They are. Every other federal judge is bound by an enforceable code of conduct. Well, every other federal judge is created by Congress under Article 3 rather than created by Article 3. You can't impose this because the separation of powers, which you believe in, Joe, prohibits you from doing so. There's no reason for the Supreme Court to be exempt. I mean, except there is a reason for the Supreme Court to be exempt from an enforceable code of conduct by the other branches of government outside of impeachment. Impeachment exists. You already have it. You already have it. But there's certainly a reason for you to not have more control over the justices. Here's the secret that none of them want you to hear. They're not mad at Harlan Crow for buying off Clarence Thomas. They're jealous. They want to control Clarence Thomas. They want to control Samuel Alito. They want to control Roberts, Barrett, Kagan. They want the control. And the control is, we will fucking remove you. We will tarnish your legacy. We will trash your name. We will strike your decisions, and we will replace you if we think your conduct is unethical. And who will sit in judgment over the Supreme Court justices who are called unethical by Congress? By the way, Congress calls everybody ethical and says that everybody's violating their laws and rules all the time. So who will sit in judgment over the judges? The Senate Judiciary Committee, right? It'll be a political witch hunt constantly. And there is no one that benefits more than the senators who do it, or the House members who do it, when they have unfettered authority to do so. When they have to do it impeachment style, it's much harder. You have to get the participation of both houses. You have to get the political capital together to attack a Supreme Court justice. And of course, the criticism of anybody who tries to remove a Supreme Court justice right now is, well, that's political. You don't like their decisions. But they're trying to put it under the guise of ethics, but it will never be enforced as ethics. It will always be enforced as politics, because that is how they operate every single time. That's how. It's what they do. But here we go, guys. Let's take a moment and have a word from our sponsor. And our sponsor today is Rumble itself. Here you go. You got a QR code on the right side of the screen, so you can, I don't know, have some youth like help you figure out how to use. Can you just like click on a QR code that is on your screen, or do you have to like look at it with another phone? I don't know, but you guys can figure it out. Let's see. Oh, Rumble wants me to tell you to download the Rumble app. That's what they want me to tell you. Download and follow me on the Rumble app. Download me and follow me on the Rumble app. You wouldn't download a car, but would you download a Ricada? Yes, you would. Make sure to download the Rumble app. Once you download it, search for my channel. And follow the channel directly on the app. This will make sure that you get a notification every time that we go live. We being I. And you guys, I guess it is we. Click the link in the description or pinned live chat to download the Rumble app on your phone for free. If you prefer to watch us on a big screen, it's also available for Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, Roku, LG, and Samsung TVs. All you need to do is search for Rumble. There you go, guys. Really simple. Go follow Rumble. Get the Rumble app. Don't be bound to the big tech companies like YouTube. Don't be bound to, sitting there in a browser window when you can use the app. The app is improving. I got to give them credit. It's improving. Rumble Studio hit a great improvement just today that actually makes me really happy, because it now actually creates the YouTube stream at the same time it creates the Rumble stream. That's huge for me, because it didn't do that before, and I had to like wait to start the stream. And then once it started, I'd have to resend out the YouTube link. Now I can do it all at once. It's awesome. Oh, also they're better on speech and all that shit too. So there you go. So thank you, Rumble, for sponsoring the show. Much appreciated on that front. So here we go. Back to this stupid letter. All three of these reforms are supported by a majority of Americans. Yeah, a majority of Americans have no idea what they're supporting with these reforms. And this is, again, guys, do you know why Supreme Court justices are not democratically elected? It's because the majority of Americans shouldn't be deciding Supreme Court justice rules or ethics or selection. If the founders wanted a majority of Americans' opinions on the Supreme Court, they would have fucking wrote it in there, but they didn't. And there's a good reason not to, because this is one of those areas that is supposed to be apolitical from the general populace. Just because it roots a political position in place, as I've said for a very long time, doesn't mean that they want the populist's whimsy to be rooted in place. It's a defined political position. Who the president is and the makeup of the Senate at the time of the nomination appointment of a Supreme Court justice is not like a whimsical thing. It goes through a lot of checks to get through those elections of everybody and to solidify that basis of power. And then you have to get them to agree on someone, which they always do ethically. And there is certainly no gifts like Harlan Crow would give to Clarence Thomas going to any senators in that approval process for their votes. No, that would never happen. They're all good people. As well as conservative and liberal constitutional scholars. Look, you can find constitutional scholars that are just as retarded as I am anywhere. There are a whole bunch of them. There are a whole bunch of them whose constitutional scholarship means less than, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. I'm trying to think of a self-deprecating way to describe it, and I can't. Nigga Please says Rekieta Law promotes critical thinking all day, every damn day. Carpe Diem. Hey, thanks, brother. Love the name. Very good. Joe Biden says, and I want to thank the bipartisan Presidential Commission on the Supreme Court of the United States. Oh, God. Bipartisan how? How? Wait. The webpage doesn't even load. Thanks. So it's gone. Hold on. Who was on it? Presidential Commission on the Supreme Court. Who's on this shit? Bipartisan. Membership. Robert Bauer and Christina Rodriguez. That's it? It's two people? Robert Bauer served as White House counsel under Obama. Christina Rodriguez is the Leighton Homer Serbic professor of law at Yale Law School, the school's first tenured Hispanic professor. Okay, sure. How is this bipartisan? However, an article in Vox described the membership as a win for the Conservative Federalist Society, saying that while the author of one of the most significant attacks on Obamacare in the last decade, Thomas B. Griffith, is on Biden's commission, none of the leading academic proponents of Supreme Court reform were appointed. Right. Oh, wait, no, there's way more members. That was just the first two. Oh, God, there's a whole lot of these assholes. They're all just law school professors. Oh, somebody kill me. Ew. Bipartisan. Trying to find bipartisanship in a law school profession is like trying to find a joke I have redacted. All right, here we go. Thank you for their insightful analysis, which informed some of these proposals. I'm sure it did. We can and must prevent the abuse of presidential power. We can and must restore the public's faith in the Supreme Court. You can't. The media is trying desperately to kill it. We can and must strengthen the guardrails of democracy. And how can we have faith in the Supreme Court when people like Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson are appointed? And I don't mean that because of anything to do with them being minorities. And I don't even mean it as hilarious as it would be if I was just talking about them being women. I mean because they're just fucking hacks. And especially Sotomayor. Sotomayor is the dumbest person at a Taco Bell drive-thru, and she's not ordering or serving. She's just there. We can't figure out why. Some of these justices are embarrassments, and that's coming from me. That's horrible. The worst part is people agree with that. You can't have faith in the Supreme Court when it's being run by the insane asylum inmates. I don't know. I butchered that analogy, but it's true. Atlas Knife and Tool says, hey, great opportunity and love to have you and the kids out. I'm running the open forging tent August 16th through 17th, Midwest Guild / Hammer Inn. Wait, what? Let's see, Midwest Guild / Hammer Inn. Midwest Knife Makers Guild. Where's this? Wait, that was 2022. Wait, here we go. Friday and Saturday 2024 in Mankato. That's cool. 16th of August. I'll have to check. I would love to come out, love to bring the kids out. So we'll see. Thanks for sending that out. Mankato's a little bit of a haul from here, but it's not terrible, I guess. We'll have to check it out. Thanks for letting me know, man. Can you email me that and remind me? I will. I promise to check my email. Wait. Patrick T. Carey, 82. Thing I was wondering, why is term limits an issue now? 50 years of a liberal court never seemed to be a problem. Oh, of course. Of course. Thank you. That was from Patrick T. Carey over on Rumble. Yeah, it's never been a problem so long as the liberal court is doing what the liberals want. But the second that it's a conservative court saying, hey, maybe we should slow down on some stuff, maybe we should roll back some stuff, they're like, no. All right, here we go. We can and must prevent the abuse of presidential power. Can we, Joe? What about yours? What about your abuses? Atlas Knife and Tool says, absolutely. Hey, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Rosemarie J. Thank you. Welcome to Paralegal Status. Thank you for becoming a member of the channel. In America, no one is above the law. In America, the people rule. Do they? I'm going to put a poll up on YouTube. I can't do one on Rumble, unfortunately. Let's put a poll up and see who rules in America. Who rules America? Who rules America, really? The people, the government. We'll start it up. We'll see. Maybe I'm going to be, sure, it'll be egg on my face, is my guess, but we'll see what you guys think. Feel free to click on that one. I personally don't feel like the people have much fucking say in America anymore. I feel like we've created an administrative state and a shadow government. I feel like here's my honest opinion. I think politicians are experiencing the same thing as you and I. I think what's happening is that politicians want to rule the country and they don't feel that they do. But what they're overlooking is that they created a system. They created a shadow government, a bureaucracy machine in the administrative state that runs the country. And they're mad that they don't have power, but they created the dearth of power. They're the ones who caused this. They're upset about it now. It's like, well, you guys fucking did it. You took away your own power. You delegated it to these administrative bodies under the executive branch. We're supposed to rule. We gave you limited power and then you took more from us and then you gave it to someone else. And now you're pissed that you don't have it. Well, we're pissed at you too. And the best part is when we get pissed off and come quietly protest. And I mean quiet, like think of how much worse January 6th could have been just on a noise level. People come and quietly protest in the halls of Congress and they lose their fucking minds. They all thought they were on like rape and murder lists. Yeah, that didn't really manifest at all. Not even a credible opportunity for that manifested. Oh, they were going to take over the whole thing and kill us and execute us and hang us. No, they weren't. They didn't even bring rope. Or guns. Or food. Or anything that they would need to take over the state capitol building. How is this going to happen? the United States Capitol building. How was this coup going to work? There was no support. There were no logistics. There was nothing in place to allow them to hold this position. And at any time, no one wanted to because holy fuck, how unpopular would that have been? But at any time, they could have just gone, and some guy walks through with a fucking machine gun, and it's over. It's a bloodbath in the halls of Congress. They could have cleared it out in 10 seconds. Thank God they didn't. But that was the first time in decades that the American people stood up to their rulers and said, hey, you know what? Fuck you for a second. Just for a second, fuck you, okay? And they lost it. They lost it in that moment. They thought, we're all going to die. We're all going to die. Maybe they should all think that from time to time. Maybe it would remind them of who's supposed to rule this country. They all say it. The people rule. The people. They don't give a shit about the people. They give a shit about their votes and their money. They don't care about you. They don't fuck with you. They don't care. They just care to create laws over us as an ad campaign against us. Holy shit, there's a giant super chat from Blitzen. Hey, Blitzen, what's up, brother? I never get to catch you live at night. Or sister, I guess. I don't know. But thank you so much for the giant super chat. I really appreciate that. Again, working on getting daytime scheduling kind of locked down. Things are moving along at a nice clip in my personal dilemmas that soon should have some more clarity and resolution on scheduling, which is why I'm looking to ramp things up to more frequently and more consistently and predictably per week so that things can kind of get going again. But again, good people inexplicably have decided that things are different than they are, but that's fine. But yeah, the kids will be home in less than 2 weeks, as I said the other day, which gives me a whole lot more certainty around when streaming will work and what streaming will look like in regards to balancing that time out with family. So yeah, thank you. But expect to see more daytime stuff as well in there. Much appreciated. And for everybody asking, like a lot of people have asked me for stuff without getting too detailed, like people who want me to release a whole bunch of things. Guys, there was a leaked court order which talks about most of that stuff that you're asking for. And I don't know if you realize, but it specifically references the fact that that's under a protective order. I can't release the stuff you want me to release. It's under protective order. So, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you want or think or whatever, but if you read the documents you've already seen and actually read them instead of reading them with like frothing at the mouth, you could maybe take a moment and go, oh, yeah, okay, I get it now. So, Jenny LJ says, hi, Nick, put your best for the win. Have a pleasant rest of your day. XOXO. Look, my case will be dealt with as on the timeline that it's supposed to be dealt with. That's the best I can say for now. But I'm hopeful for a good resolution, good outcome to it. And this has been a fun little nightmare. And I wouldn't wish it on almost any of you. Couple of you, though. Couple of you. But yeah, no, it's not a great thing. It's not a funny joke to me at all, but it is. So it's something I have to deal with, and everybody wants something out of it. But the one person who can't do almost any of the things that people are asking is me, because I'm the one on the line here, guys. Sorry. So you'll just have to deal with what you get elsewhere. Spoxbro says he hates me. Okay, cool. Sounds good. Wellness check on the pug. The pug. Oh no, the pug's outside right now. Pug got a bath earlier. Sounds fun. Uh, yeah, yeah. Anyway, let's see. I think I've got another. Oh yes, we've got the Minnesota duty to retreat. Kind of duty to retreat thing. Let's take a brief pause before doing that though, and talk about this other story I wanted to talk about. It's related to um this is actually related to the January 6th shit and the 2020 election. SDD says, just want our late night chats back. Miss those fireside lot chats. They're not necessarily gone. They'll probably be less frequent. Again, scheduling is going to change because kind of the structure. And I was looking to change schedules anyway. And as we moved out of the last school year through the summer and into the next school year, there's already going to be changes because each school year for us is very, very different. Jenny LJ, I didn't take it as a joke. Thank you. I really appreciate that. But Niels Mulvad says, so you washed dogs earlier? I don't know what that means. No, the pug got a bath outside. So it was fun. It was fun. We had we got one of those. See, last year, I think it was at the end of last summer or maybe the summer before, we got one of those big bouncy houses that hook up to like a water hose that sprays everywhere, and like the kids it inflates and the kids can jump all over it and climb in their slides and stuff. And so we had one of those set up today for the kids, and we had the dog out and stuff. It was really just nice. So here we go. This is a crazy part of the January 6th stuff in the 2020 election. And it's a panel from Washington, D.C. recommending Jeffrey Clark, who is a lawyer in the White House under Donald Trump, have his law license suspended over his role in efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Now, you'll have to forgive the writing of this article and the perspective of it, because it is highly loaded with the same sort of biased anti-Trump language that you find everywhere. And look, I don't say that I am personally like currently a Trump supporter. I mean, I guess that could always change. Depends. Can't see it changing. Can't see it changing right now. Wonderful Trump. But no, I'm currently a Trump supporter. But I say this as a non-Trump supporter. The punishment of everyone around Trump who advised him on the 2020 election and what he could do is insane. And going after the lawyers in the ways that they have should actually really deeply disturb the profession and the public. Julius Grover says, just joined the stream. Hope you're doing well. I am doing pretty well today, Julius. Thank you. But let's take a peek at this. Nick, how do you keep your nose from hitting the mic? Well, everything is inside my nose. It's like a black hole. So here we go. Yeah, the panel recommends Trump ally Jeffrey Clark's law license to be suspended over his role in efforts to overturn the 2020 election. So we have a faulty premise right at the start. Trump didn't attempt to overturn the 2020 election. See, the 2020 election would have to be decided, and then there would have to be an attempt to undecide it. That didn't actually occur ever. I don't know if people paid attention to this. Once the 2020 election was decided officially and constitutionally, it was done. Von Saltinator, no, it could not be enlarged. You only got closer into it. Like, again, as if you were falling into a black hole, it appears larger as time goes on. So Jeffrey Clark, the Trump-era Justice Department official who advocated for the department to contact Georgia and cast doubt on Donald Trump's 2020 election loss, should face a 2-year suspension from practicing law, a disciplinary committee in Washington, D.C. said Thursday. So here we go. Whoa. He said that Trump should advocate for the Department of Justice should step in, contact Georgia, and cast doubts on the election loss. That's not what happened, though. They suggested that there was something interfering in Georgia because there was weird shit going on in Georgia. Weird shit, even if it was legitimate, it comes across as very odd and out of the norm for an election. So he urges the Department of Justice to intervene by investigating. As an environmental lawyer at the Justice Department, Clark tried to push through an official letter to officials in Georgia after the 2020 election, urging the state to interfere with the election results. His superiors at the Justice Department told him no. So, okay. What was I need you guys to interfere with the election results. Remember the bias writing of this article because it's really fucking important. The disciplinary committee found Clark included false and misleading information in the letter. Now, that might be true. The problem with trying to act on the election is the time window for action is so small. You've got election day, which is what, like Tuesday, the 2nd through the 7th or something like that. And then you have to be done basically by December 19th. I guess you could say by January 6th, January 7th, whatever it is, kind of, fluctuates based on the calendar days, but holy fuck, you've got 2 months, man. You've got 2 months to do anything in regards to the election. There's a lot of bad information out there that's not necessarily maliciously placed. Let's see. What Mr. Clark did was objectively reckless. This is the best part. It was objectively reckless, but subjectively, the evidence indicated that he thought he had been chosen for a historic cause to which he applied all of his energy. Oh, so he acted like a lawyer. So objectively, he was bad guy, but subjectively, from his perspective, he was doing the right thing. Like he's like, oh no, I found this stuff and I think it's bad, so we got to fix it. So the question is, how do they find it's objectively reckless? That's kind of an interesting idea here. Clark maintained he believed he could send the letter to Georgia and even took the stand in his own defense at the disciplinary trial. He's like, no, of course I could send that letter. Then acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen and Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue. Jeffrey Rosen is a guy who completely fucked over Trump, by the way, also testified in Clark's proceeding, saying the Justice Department didn't find significant fraud in the elections, even while Clark insisted it might. Well, but did they look? Rosen and Donahue, did you guys actually look? Did you investigate it? How? When? What was the timeline on that? None of these people actually investigated shit. Their investigations involved checking with states saying, hey, did you do your recounts and stuff? And they're like, yeah, we checked ourselves. We're good. The erection, formerly known as LIMP, says civil war breaking out in Britain. Police are siding with illegal invaders. That shouldn't surprise you in Britain. But here we go. His sincerity of belief does not make him less reckless. I mean, I think it kind of does. I think it kind of does. Like, so recklessness generally involves the creation or recognition or knowledge of a dangerous situation and then proceeding through the situation in a way that is flippant to the outcome of the danger. So the driving blindfolded is reckless. Like, that when you're driving something that is a large vehicle that can cause a lot of damage. Putting on a blindfold means you can't see, but then you drive blindfold anyway, you create a situation that is now dangerous, and then you act with no regard for the danger that you've created. Now, you might be able to drive perfectly blindfolded for any number of miles, but in the event that you don't drive perfectly, you were reckless in how you acted, and that recklessness led to the injury. That's this. So how is he's like, his sincerity of belief and the propriety of his actions doesn't take away from the recklessness, but it does. It means that he believed he was doing the right thing and was unaware of the dangers specifically. but okay. I guess. But here we go. The committee wrote in his findings, to the contrary, we conclude that his personal beliefs blinded him from objectively assessing the facts and the reality of his proposed course of action and caused him to rationalize a broader role for the Department of Justice, failing to distinguish President Trump from candidate Trump. And again, this is amazing because this is a person in the Department of Justice who believes that they're assessing the validity of an election, theoretically. I mean, who knows? Who knows? But how this is written is amazing. Well, look, he's now not being objective, but lawyers aren't really supposed to be objective. Actually, lawyers are not supposed to be objective. They're supposed to zealously represent the interests of their clients. Now, the problem here, the one caveat, the saving grace, I guess, is saying that distinguishing President Trump from candidate Trump, unless, in my opinion, this might be important, he considered President Trump as even just the presidency and the Department of Justice's role in preserving the integrity of the election, not necessarily in preserving the integrity of the election for Trump. I find a hard time accepting their reasoning here. The disciplinary council that brought the case against Clark sought for him to face a severe sanction like disbarment, of course. While Clark's team wanted him to avoid being disciplined, the recommendation laid out in a 213-page report after a quasi-trial proceeding is an early step in the process of attorney discipline. Holy shit. If the recommendation is adopted, so he's not suspended yet, Clark would face less fallout than two other attorneys who may be disbarred for their work for Trump, John Eastman and Rudy Giuliani. The hearing committee wrote in its report that it doesn't believe there was clear and convincing evidence that Mr. Clark was as culpable as those two who worked privately for Trump after the election. That's amazing, though. Think of this. Well, he wasn't as bad as these guys, but does that matter? Like, either way you go on this, does it matter? Like, his relative badness to Rudy Giuliani and John Eastman is irrelevant to me. But to me, that's completely fucking irrelevant. The question is, does he merit discipline? Not does he merit some level of discipline compared to these two people? Maybe that would be a course of argument against this. Look, they're comparing me to someone else rather than the standard. The standard is what matters. Quote, we cannot recommend sanctioning Mr. Clark from what might be true or what evidence was presented in other cases. We can only recommend sanctioning him for what has been proven in this case by clear and convincing evidence, the report said. So they try and again cover up that he's not as culpable as the other people, but it's just kind of a strange way to go about that. But the lesson here is simple. The lesson here is simple. If you worked for the losing side in 2020, fuck you. Because this is entirely political. And the fact that they're going after lawyers and advisors for doing their duty and advising and lawyering on behalf of their purported client, that should terrify people. Because when you win and you can go after the people whose job it is to take the legal route, then you can go after anybody. Matt Amos over on Local says, you see much about the unrest in the UK right now. No, I've not been watching the unrest in the UK. Protestants and Catholics are marching together about mass immigration and the fuck that killed those 3 kids. I have no idea what happened. I assume a refugee or something. Hold on. UK unrest. I know nothing about this. Far-right protesters clash with police in UK cities as unrest spread. That's from Al Jazeera. That's probably trustworthy. Renewed rioting sweeps British cities in wake of child murders. Let's take a peek at this. I don't know. We'll do it live. Doing it live. I don't know anything about this. So Liverpool, England, Belfast, from Reuters. Violent disorder swept across several British cities Saturday, injuring police, oh no, and damaging property in the most widespread rioting in the country for 13 years, following the murder of three young girls in northwest England. You know, there's something about murder. Kids get murdered in Chicago all the time. And they're like, yeah. But most places, they're like, well, try not murdering children. Riots involving hundreds of anti-immigration protesters have erupted in towns and cities after false information spread rapidly on social media that the suspect in Monday's knife attack at a children's dance class in Southport was a radical Muslim migrant. Oh, that's false information. False information. Low watermark, member for 20 months at the super lawyer level. Thank you. Says, wait, are you saying lawyers should not be jailed for being in support of their clients? It means lawyers might not be jailed. All lawyers need to be jailed, right? Just kidding. No, all lawyers need to be killed. I've said that so many times. I know. That means I have to go. Just make me last because I'm the worst one. Here we go. So they're saying it's false information now. Fact check. Let's do the fact check here. You guys are giving me fake news. Fake news here. Here we go. The suspect arrested in connection with the fatal stabbing of 3 children in Northwest England was born in the UK, according to police, contrary to online posts claiming he was an asylum seeker who arrived in the country by boat in 2023. 8 other children, 2 adults were also injured, some critically, in the knife attack in South Park. Time to ban knives. By the way, really getting tired of these knife things. Town north of Liverpool, on July 29th, a male suspect was arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder, Merseyside police said in a statement. Misleading posts on X, Facebook, and TikTok said the detained suspect was an asylum seeker named Ali al-Shakati. Ali al-Shakati, a Muslim asylum seeker. Apparently, they come in here, they look for asylum. The UK, they give pretty good asylum. It's not great. They kind of give it out to everybody because it's a little low quality. Not great. America, we have way better asylum under Donald Trump. Under me was wonderful, beautiful asylum. You could only get it if you really deserved it, if you earned it. We're a meritocracy here, not like those commies over in England. So here we go. False. So 17-year-old Ali al-Shakati from Banks has been arrested, blah, blah, blah. The claim appeared to originate from a July 29 article on the website Channel 3 Now that was later updated to remove in-text references to Ali al-Shakati. So who was arrested? Arclight Redux says Rwandan. Look, I don't know all of those countries. They're all the same. I think that's what we say with non-discrimination. We treat all countries the same. They're all Muslim. So, Merseyside police told Reuters in an email that's not the suspect's name, referred Reuters to its statement that said the suspect was born in Cardiff, Wales. What's the suspect's name, though? What's the suspect's name? Come on. Who? Does anybody know? Oh, they're verifying that I'm human. Hold on. I failed. He was born here, but what's the name? Come on. It's a Taylor Swift event. Okay. Oh, wait, this is published from the Merseyside police. Is their chief of police a woman? It says that's a mom of 2 daughters and the nana of a 5-year-old granddaughter. Okay. She's old too. Axel Radakabanda. Axel Radakabanda. Come on. Why? Okay. All right. So yeah, well, that's going to help. That's going to help with the, that sounds, who the fuck is this guy? Now I'm just checking on this. why would I need Radicabana would accompany his father to karate classes as a child. So here we go. Let's see this. Teenager charged with the murders of 3 girls at a Taylor Swift. Who turns 18 on Wednesday, was born in Cardiff to Rwandan parents, been living in the village of Banks just outside Southport at the time of the attack. Hmm. The sketch of him. Dude, like if I get a sketch ever made of me, I hope it looks fucking Beetlejuiced out like that. It's just the mayor of Chicago. What was her name? What was that lady's name? Mayor of Chicago. Beetlejuice. Lori Lightfoot. Look at this. It's really unfortunate that fucking Lori Lightfoot went and stabbed all those kids. No. So he has an older brother who was also born in the Welsh capital. Helen, neighbor of the family while they lived there, told the BBC of her shock, adding they were a lovely young couple. They were little boys. They were boisterous. Well, wait. They were born in Cardiff, but did little boy. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. Dad was nice. He went to work every day. They had a small family car, a little hatchback. There were no problems while they were living here. While they were living here, where did they go? Is anybody else noticing something here? They're talking about they're living there as if they were in the past. Did they go somewhere else, like back to Rwanda and then come back? Last time I saw the father who was taking part in his grading, he wasn't my student, he was somebody else's. Told him, you can carry on, but if you have a brainstorm and turn it on now, I would still fail you. Said he wanted his money back. Once you pay your money, there's to return normally. But I said, give him his money back and tell him to get out. It's the last time I saw him. Family reportedly moved to the Southport area. Okay, around 2013, lived in a semi-detached property in a quiet cul-de-sac in Banks. Neighbors said the family are heavily involved with the local church, and they would often hear singing from their house. Times reported that it's a background in musical theater. Turned up one day in class and said, make him welcome because he's just moved from quite far away. Where I'm trying to branch out and meet kids in the community. Blah, 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 blah. Didn't really talk about himself that much. Brother was more talkative. Prosecution said he had an autism spectrum disorder diagnosis and had been unwilling to leave the house and communicate with family for a period of time. Okay. So here we go. Back to the rioting article. Let's see. Police have said the suspect, here it was, Radicabana, was born in Britain, but protests by anti-immigration, anti-Muslim demonstrators have continued, descending into violence, arson, and looting. Okay, so here's the deal. This is, there's not any, I don't think there's a name for this, but I'll coin it the fallacy of specificity, where what they're doing in the news story, right? They're saying, well, they're wrong about the thing. And since they're wrong about the thing, all of the unrest is pretend because it wasn't a Muslim immigrant who stabbed the little girls. Therefore, blah, 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 blah. And that would make some sense if it was the first incident by a Muslim immigrant in the UK. But the unrest isn't coming out of nowhere or merely out of racism or some anti-Muslim sentiment. It's coming out of years and years and years of Muslim immigrants causing at least a perception of problems in British communities. UK people are not happy with the flood of migrants into their countries. They're not happy with their government's treatment of the migrants with kid gloves. They're not happy with the rise in crime, the rise in poverty. They're not happy with what they have done to the cities. And now that's not every immigrant's issue, obviously, but the bad ones really make it fucking hard to justify the good ones, especially if you're the parent of some kid or some woman who is raped or stabbed. And that has been going on in England for quite some time. But what they're doing with these articles, like, oh, no, all of their unrest is false because, look, guys, it wasn't a Muslim this time. That was fake news. It's like, well, why was that fake news there? Why is that the dominating perception? And why was that enough of a match point to light off the fucking powder keg you have now? Oh, it's because the underlying problems already existed. They pre existed and will post exist the small mistake. Now, it always sucks. It always sucks when the powder keg goes off and affects people, of course. But if it wasn't this thing, it was going to be the next thing. The fallacy of specificity is this great way that the media tries to undermine what's actually going on and just tell you that reality isn't what it is. Like, well, they're wrong about this one thing, so therefore everything's wrong. It's like, yeah, but England wouldn't be on fire and rioting if all of the other shit leading up to this hadn't happened. It doesn't invalidate for a moment everything people are going through. So here we go. Violent disorder erupted in Liverpool, Bristol, Hull, and Belfast, 4 cities located in different corners of the UK, with scuffles breaking out and bricks and bottles thrown as anti-immigration protesters face groups opposed to racism. We're anti-immigration. We're opposed to racism. All right. Groups opposed to racism. Many police officers suffered injuries. Oh, Dios mío. As they tried to keep several hundred rival protesters, largely young men who were chanting slogans from clashing. Slogans. What are they? See, I don't know if people, well, I won't say I don't know if people know this. My experience with English may be different than y'all's. In America, you can get some funny slogans, but most of the people who use slogans are like Antifa and they're not funny. Antifa's not even real anymore, but you know what I mean? Like BLM, Antifa, the same crop of people that come up rebranded every so often. But the English have a way with language because they get to say like fag and cunt and stuff like that and not be punished for it. So you can imagine the slogans going on. Gosh, I wonder what they are. Huge tip from Low Watermark over on Locals. Thank you, brother. He says, good job tonight, Nick. Thank you very much. It's really appreciated. Thank you. But all right, here we go. In Liverpool. Oh, wait, let's get this article back up. Can you imagine the slogans? They were chanting slogans. Oh, really? What were they? Did they rhyme? Oh my gosh. Whew. In Liverpool, 2 officers were in hospital with suspected facial fractures. Fuck. While another was pushed from his motorbike and assaulted in the disorder involving some 750 protesters and a similar number of rival protesters. Merseyside police. I've been saying that wrong the whole time. I'm not British. Merseyside police, the force overseeing the northwestern city, said. See, this is the thing, right? You notice when they didn't intervene? Do you guys remember that? Cops weren't getting injured like crazy leading up to now. Now they're intervening. And therein lies the problem. They don't realize what they're reinforcing. The UK people who are out there going, hey, we don't like that you're treating these people different than us. You're giving them our time. You're giving them our resources. You're not prosecuting them for crimes that we're victims of. And they get mad enough to come out in force and say, no, this is bullshit. They're killing our kids now. They might be wrong, right? Might be wrong, but they're saying it's bullshit. They're killing our kids now and you're not doing anything for us. You're not protecting us from these people. And what do? They come out and protect specifically the people that they're saying you're not protecting us from them. They protect the other side. It's a reinforcing problem. The police response has to be proportional to the violence. And if there's any perception at all that the police response is disproportionately in favor of the immigrant population or the Muslim population versus the quote unquote original English population, just framing it the way that I'm assuming they would see it. Man, you're just fucking throwing gasoline on it. So here we go. At least 2 shops in Liverpool were vandalized and looted, police said. Man, try summer love, man. Similar scenes were witnessed in the southwestern city of Bristol, although anti-racist protesters outnumbered anti-immigration groups, with TV footage showing them facing off with police in riot gear. In Belfast, some businesses reported damage to property, while at least one was set on fire, according to police. I have no reason why they attacked us, said Rami Akyul, standing outside the shattered glass doors of his cafe in Belfast, which he said was attacked by dozens of people with bottles and chairs. I've lived here 35 years. My kids, my wife is from here. I don't know what to say. It's terrible, he said. Yeah, buddy, sorry. That sucks. Like, that does suck for that guy. But the mob doesn't care. The mob doesn't do nuance. It doesn't need nuance. Across Britain, police have arrested dozens of individuals for offenses ranging from violent disorder to burglary and criminal damage. Extra police have been deployed across cities, while mosques across the country have been advised to strengthen security following an attack on a mosque in Southport on Tuesday. What does mosque security look like in England? Because like even the police largely are disarmed. There's an armed segment of the police, right? But I think the regular street patrols are disarmed now. They have tasers or, not less lethal options, but they don't have firearms. Kind of curious, like what increased security at a mosque looks like. They can't have guns either. Unforgivable violence. Prime Minister Keir Starmer, facing his first big test since his election a month ago, has condemned the far right. Now, of course, no, he wouldn't do that. For the wave of violence and backed police to take strong action. He discussed the disorder with senior ministers on Saturday, his office said. The last time riots erupted in Britain was in 2011, when a much larger outbreak of violence took hold, with thousands of people taking the streets for 5 nights after police shot dead a black man in London. Why did they condemn the violence then? On Friday night, hundreds of anti-immigration demonstrators in Sunderland threw stones at police in riot gear near a mosque before overturning vehicles, setting a car alight and starting a fire near a police station. This was not a protest. This was unforgivable violence and disorder. Mark Hall, chief police superintendent of the Sunderland area, told reporters on Saturday. Further protests planned for Sunday. There you go. That's crazy. I had no idea this was going on. I haven't been following anything international. Except for that French guy who pole vaulted so hard his dick got him disqualified. Did you guys see that? That was kind of funny. No, Starmer took the knee. Yeah, tugs him. I figured. Those riots were the voice of the unheard. Yeah, as the unheard in Britain are like screaming at the top of their lungs, please don't make us riot. We've held off forever. Amazing. But yeah, I don't know if you guys saw that that thing. The French pole vaulter. All right. Let's see. I could do another ad, but that's gay. Let's just do the last story. I only have 10 minutes left. Again, I have a hard out at 6. My kids are coming back and we're going to be hanging out with them, obviously. So we gotta wrap this thing up in just a second. I wanted to talk about this case that just came out of Minnesota, and I'll probably, since I delayed too long talking about the Brit Bong stuff, I might go more in depth. It's not a long decision, but it's a Minnesota Supreme Court decision about the duty to retreat in a self-defense situation. Sort of. On the surface, it is. People are thinking, because of maybe the phrasing of the headlines, that people believe that there wasn't a duty to retreat in Minnesota, and now there is. But the duty to retreat existed in Minnesota already. Again, we are a state full of absolute cowardice in regards to guns. Absolute cowardice in regards to guns. And there is no way or there's a very minimal balance, which I think causes the misperception, and that is that Minnesota is a hunting state. Like outside of the Twin Cities, guns are very popular as a hunting implement, but any political decision involving guns is always like, well, we love guns for hunting, but liberal talking point about Second Amendment rights, about firearms and stuff like that. They're supposed to be relegated to sporting and hunting and nothing else. The idea that you should have the audacity to defend yourself is fucking crazy. I mean, what's going to happen? Like, what is someone going to kneel on you or something and kill you? No, you're going to be fine. Never defend yourself. That's Minnesota. But I wanted to I'll briefly try and address and clear up this idea. Minnesota has had a duty to retreat forever. Now, the duty to retreat is a reasonable duty to retreat. Would a reasonable person similarly situated find an opportunity to retreat and do so before defending themselves? This case is a little different than that. That already existed. This was a case of first impression for the Minnesota Supreme Court because it involved a specific thing. It involved the brandishing of a gun for the purposes of causing fear or apprehension in the victim. So in this case, there wasn't an actual self-defense action of like pulling a trigger and blasting someone or hitting someone or anything like that. And that's what makes this particularly egregious. Someone felt that they were being attacked in some way. We'll cover the facts when I cover the case on the next show. Someone felt they were being attacked in some way. So they drew their gun. They brandished a firearm for the purposes of causing fear. Minnesota has 2 assault statutes. We don't have assault and battery. We have assault, fear, and assault harm. Assault fear is fear and apprehension of imminent harm. Assault harm is actually causing harm, raising a fist to someone or actually hitting him in the face, right? So in this case, their defense was to draw a gun and threaten the use of the gun in defense to the person. And the Minnesota Supreme Court has found, I think inappropriately, that a duty to retreat exists before brandishing. That someone who brandishes a firearm in defense without first retreating. So there's some acknowledgement that the person may have actually found themselves in reasonable fear. They're saying, look, before you pull a gun and threaten, you better fucking run first, which is an insane proposition. The duty to retreat is a relatively insane proposition on its own because it eliminates much of the vital critical moments necessary in a self-defense situation to properly defend yourself. It puts you further down the victim status hole you're already in, because if someone's running at you, you don't have much time to draw and fire. You don't have much time to pull a knife out. You don't even have much time to clench a fist and swing. The closer someone is, the less time you have. So to say now that you have to consider the possibility that you could run away, and that possibility, imagine how a prosecutor frames it. Oh, God's favorite aunt says he drew a machete, not a gun. Even better, right? So now imagine how a prosecutor frames it. Well, the alleged assailant is 30 yards away. So, and there's nothing behind the defendant. So the defendant had ample time to turn and run, as if turning and running from someone who's 30 yards away, 1, as if you're going to get away. 2, as if you can maintain outrunning them. How far do you have to run? How far do you have to retreat? You have to retreat until your back's against a wall or they catch you. The notion of having a duty to retreat before brandishing a weapon. The brandishing of a weapon is a thing intended to stop the action without the violence. Now, of course, people will argue that a brandishing of a gun or some other weapon is just a precursor to the use of that weapon. And that is sometimes true. It may even be the majority of times true. But was it that time true? We don't know because he never got to swing. But that's what the Minnesota Supreme Court has upheld, a duty to retreat in brandishing. And look, I think duty to retreat is bullshit from the start, just as a first principle. A duty to retreat is bullshit. No one should have the right, and they do have a right, to force you to leave the place you're in by threat of violence and require you to take an action where if you do the opposite, it is unlawful. No one should have that power over you. You're standing where you're standing and you have a right to be there. Unless you don't, right? There are situations where you don't have a right to be there. But if you have a right to be there, no one should be able to intimidate you out of that position. And if someone tries to, someone puts you under threat of violence, you should be able to respond proportionally as anyone would without having to leave your spot first. I think that any other proposition to the contrary is ridiculous. But we'll go through that case with a little bit more thoroughness on the next show, if I remember. But it's pretty interesting because that's a deviation from what people are normally used to. Duty to retreat before you pull the trigger, right? This is duty to retreat before you reach in your pants. And no one should have to retreat anywhere when they're reaching in their pants. So anyway, Julius Grover says Minnesota, a state so liberal they have 2 Democratic parties. Former Minnesota resident. Yeah, no kidding. Oh my gosh. The guy who told me to fuck off. Your grasp of the facts is wildly incorrect. That's cool. Have fun with it. All right, guys. Dicker says Ricada OnlyFans fucking win. Man, I don't know. Hopefully soon. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope you like the daytime show and the topics and the discussion. Thank you, of course, for all the contributions to the show. Really helps. Now my kids will be here in 2 minutes. I can go hang out with them. Hope you guys have a fantastic evening. Stay tuned for a show announcement. We'll see what we can do. Again, working towards 3 shows a week on a consistent schedule. And as that becomes more and more clear, like when that will be, I'll be talking about it more. But as always, it's a pleasure chatting with you guys. So hope you have a good night. Let's see. I got to upload all my assets to Rumble Studio. Got to upload my ass to Rumble Studio. All right. You guys have a good night. Peace.